Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Jacob here, and today I'm going to do my first ever book haul video. I recently got an entire box of books here. It was a fill up the box sale, which is my favorite. Sadly, the store I went to was going out of business, but it happens. One less bookstore in my local area, which does make me sad, but I did get a lot of great things. First up, I want to show you guys, I did get these three kind of classic books. Two are based on movies. Goodbye Columbus by Philip Roth, which I've wanted to read for a while because I really like the old film. I can't remember really who's in it, but I think it came out around like the 60s. That is actually based on this. I've actually never seen the movie Bridge Over the River Kwai, but I have heard really good things about the book. So thought I would give that a check out once again. I mean, it was a fill up the box, so it doesn't really cost me anything but shelf space. And then I got the Master of Ballentry by Robert Louis Stevenson. I've never read this. I have heard that this is kind of right up my alley, as I do like a lot of like action adventure books, especially ones that are set in like this time period, you know, flintlock pistols, swords, that type of thing. And then I've been reading a lot of gothic horror this year, and I ended up finding this is the Winterburn horror. Writhing Evil and Raw Terror Stalk Them All by R. Warner Crosetti. But I do really like that cover. Here, you guys can check that out. And it says on the back, Black Mass, when Henry Dillon had summoned Eric Campion to come to his aid before the hounds of hell were set loose, Eric had expected to find evil, natural or supernatural. What he found in Winterburn was beyond belief, a village of cultists and bizarre madness that stemmed from no known or human cause. So yeah, this is right up my alley. I am looking forward to read this. It's not very long, so I think I'm going to knock it out pretty fast. I'm already at that point, though, where I'm reading way too many books at one time. Next up is Sympathy for the Devil by Ken Anderson. And it says, Hansen was a college boy and a dreamer, but in Vietnam, his old self died. A Green Beret fighting with an elite company along the Laotian border, he was officially denied by his government and plunged into a world of fear and sudden death. A world ruled by warriors who had learned cruelty to survive. Here Hansen and his buddies will become superb and efficient soldiers and the most savage beasts in the jungle. Killers in love with their job. And Oliver Stone, the director of Platoon, is credited with saying chilling and authentic about the book. And it says also on the back that Kent Anderson was a sergeant in the Special Forces in Vietnam. I ended up getting a lot of men's, or quote unquote, I should say, the genre known as men's action adventure in this lot. I like some of it. This, I don't know if I would throw that in there yet as men's action adventure, or if this is going to be just more like historical fiction. On the back it actually calls it Vietnam fiction, which I'm sure just like World War II fiction, right after that time period, there was a glut of those types of books. Either way, I'm looking forward to reading this. It does say Warner Books put it out, a Warner Communications company, so I don't know if it's actually based on a movie or not. If it is, I haven't seen it. But either way, it looks like it's going to be an interesting read. And if not, I'll give it to one of my grandfathers because they both love that type of stuff. Next, I got the science fiction Roll of Honor, edited by Frederick Pohl. An anthology of fiction and nonfiction by guests of honor at World Science Fiction Conventions, including work by Paul Anderson, Arthur C. Clarke, and Isaac Asimov. I'm gonna be honest, I don't read all of these, but I do pick up just about every old science fiction anthology I can. They are usually very cheap. The covers tend to be awesome. And while I do tend to pick and choose the stories I read in them, like I said, I always find them enjoyable. I especially really like older science fiction, even though some of it is now slightly problematic with its themes. But I do find that a I guess the golden and silver age science fiction seemed to be a lot more hopeful in terms of technology and just where the world would progress to, whereas a lot of newer science fiction isn't. It's a lot more darker. Not Warhammer 40k dark, but still up there. But either way, I'm looking forward to picking through this and checking some of this out. Then from the author, in the tradition of the Andromeda Strain, I have The Anthrax Mutation by Alan Scott. I picked this up because it had pulpy bats on the cover. I'm not gonna lie, I also really love classic horror books. This very much looks like a paperback from hell, if you're familiar with those books. And it says, Flight of Anthrax. The explosion was one of those cruel acts of fate for which man never prepares. When the walls of the remote research center blew sky high, the 1,500 experimental bats carrying the deadly anthrax bacillus, don't know if I pronounced that right, were released into the atmosphere. Within minutes, death claimed the entire population of Strumford. There had been no time to alert the authorities, but one man staying in the next town witnessed the explosion on the hill with growing terror. Major Glenn Thomas had been given a top-secret briefing on the anthrax experiment that very day. He was now the only man alive who knew of the bats and the bizarre potential annihilation of the human race. Bum bum bum. So yeah, I'm excited to read this. I don't know if it had another release, because it does say on it original title Project Dracula, which, I mean, compared to Project Dracula, I will say the Anthrax Mutation is probably the better choice. But yeah, either way, I'm pretty excited to read this at some point over the summer. An interesting thing to note is that this was probably a lot scarier in the time period of which it came out. It looks like it probably came out around the 60s, 70s, especially with those sweet, sweet blue pulp pages, because our government was actually doing things with bats. I don't know if they ever did anything with anthrax, but I do know there was a entire thing, you can look it up, where they tried to attach bombs to bats and ended up setting fire to a building on, I think it was a base down in Texas. I don't know if that was like the mid-50s, something like that. But anyway, if you want to check that out, I'm sure History Channel probably did a whole thing on it. Next up, I have The Unloved by John Saul. I actually already have this book, but this one was in better condition than the paperback I have. I tend to pick up John Saul books whenever I can. He's quickly become one of those authors that I know that even if I don't like the entire book, I will like things in the book. That being said, I've yet to read a John Saul book that I didn't like. He's just one of those horror authors that is just always entertaining. And yeah, he does a lot of like family horror, if that kind of makes sense. It's usually people moving to, you know, smaller areas, usually with families or families that have secrets type thing. Either way, it's very entertaining. I'm not going to read the back of this book. It's like a lot, but do check out that cover. It's, you know, the skeleton covers are always fun to find. Next up, I have Ruby Jean Jensen's Deathstone, another sweet skeleton cover. And it's kind of cool because this is actually a pretty nice addition. The last time I came across a Ruby Jean Jensen book, like only half the cover was left. You know a book's good when it is that well read. And on the back it says, Greta and Derek fished the ring out of an abandoned well. It was gold with a dark red jewel that seemed to ripple with streaks of fire. Greta loved the ring, so much that she traded Derek her pearl-handled knife for it. Never mind that it was too big for her finger. 9-year-old Greta knew how to pad the ring with tape so it fit just so. And that's when the strange feeling began to haunt Greta. The terrifying feeling that someone was following her. A shadowy someone who whispered in Greta's ear, urging her to kill. Then the murders began, just as the unknown someone started to become visible. Deathstone. Bum bum bum. Yeah, it definitely seems like it's going to be something fun to read. I also love stories that have cursed items. Maybe it's because I'm such a Lord of the Rings fan. I don't know. Another classic book I picked up was Watership Down. If you don't know what Watership Down is, I do recommend watching the cartoon, just not with your kids unless they want to see bunnies kill each other. This is another one of those books that I've never actually read, but growing up I did see the cartoon a lot. Sometimes they'd even show it in school, which could be traumatic depending on your school system. Then I have Hazard by Gerald A. Brown, author of the New York Times bestseller 19 Purchase Street. I do love that cover. It's one of the reasons I picked it up. It's, if you can't see it, it's kind of like this big gothic mansion with, you know, a faint red glow behind it, lightning striking, and you're kind of getting the image through the like wrought iron gates, these massive unescapable gates. It just screams like classic horror. And it says, Hazard lives on the razor's edge, risking a fortune on the throw of dice, indulging in kinky sex with the idle rich, speeding through the exotic capitals of the world in his fantastic sports car. Freelance intelligence agent Norman Hazard flirts with death daily. Yeah, and that's the weird thing about this, is it very much on the front looks like it's going to be a horror book, but it's also, the blurb makes it sound like it's a spy. But then the blurb under it says his chilling novel of a secret agent with a deadly gift. So maybe he's sidekick. It's going to be interesting to read it and see if this is actually a horror novel or just has a horror-like cover, which I've found when picking through books at thrift stores and, you know, just different places like that. This actually was pretty common early on, where books would get covers that didn't really align to the genre at all. And I think that still happens nowadays, but not as often as it did back then. So, but this will be interesting to see. I am hoping it's horror. If it is horror, I will obviously do a video talking about it. And then a straight up pulp one, I have Richard S. Prather, Have Gat, Will Travel, 6 Shel Scott stories. Shel Scott is a Norrish hero, I do believe, from the, there's a lot of, I don't know which magazines, but serialized fiction. There has been a new release. I think you can get the entire Shel Scott collection now from Wolfpack Publishing. I saw that in a Facebook group I'm a part of earlier this week. And on the back it says, Shel Scott will slay you. Here's a crackling collection of corpse-a-minute capers that take your favorite raffish private eye to all 4 corners of the underworld and back, if he's lucky. Meet Shel Scott joyously wading into battle with thugs, blondes, hopheads, brunettes, killers, redheads, gang lords, and don't forget the dames. You gotta love that the women are included with the thugs, killers, and hotheads, and there's also dames. I think these kind of books are fun. I do like the old serialized, you know, what do they put it, action a minute, Norrish kind of books. So I'm excited to read this. I'm going to be very careful with it though, because it is damaged and I am afraid it might fall apart if I am too rough with it. But that's always a problem when getting these older books. Next up is White Shark by Peter Benchley. I don't know how many shark books Peter Benchley actually wrote. I know he wrote The Deep after this. I don't think there's sharks in that though, but I have been trying to get my hands on a nice copy of this for a little while, since I think this is the only other shark book, at least the only other shark book that I know of that Peter Benchley wrote after besides Jaws. So it is going to be really interesting to read through this as someone who also writes books about sharks. But yeah, I'm excited for this. It's also a really beautiful hardback edition that I hope will be on my shelf for years to come. Let's see if I can precariously stack all these books on this desk. Next up, I have Trail of Revenge by Tex Ryland. When a man's best friend is shot in the back, there is only one trail for him to ride. The Trail of Revenge. This is a very short Western book. I do love Westerns. My guess is this is serialized from a magazine, much like the others, but I could be wrong. I also really love the fact that Westerns, besides like the William Johnstones, which are super thick, a lot of Westerns for a very long time, I mean, this is only 126 pages. I mean, they're technically novellas a lot of times. So it's interesting to me to see, you know, to get these, because they're quick to read, which I love, and you can just consume them so fast, which is why I love Westerns. That, and I mean, it may be different if I came up on William Johnstone instead of Louis L'Amour, but I came up on Louis L'Amour, so short and sweet with me when it comes to Westerns is always better. Next up, I have The Hill of Ashes by Leslie Ames. As you can see, I did get a lot of older paperbacks in this. And it says, behind the bright lights of Hollywood, Lois finds a world of corruption and violence. A frightening revelation. When Lois Lester took a position as assistant to TV star Tom Ashcroft in his lavish home set high in the hills over Hollywood, she was confronted with a frightening revelation that her predecessor had died under mysterious circumstances, which no one appeared willing to discuss. With her fiancé, theatrical agent Alan Elston, across the continent, Lois sought to unravel the secrets of corruption and violence surrounding Ash Hill's occupants and their frightening visitors. Involved with the underworld against her will, Lois finds herself in danger from people who would stop at nothing, not even murder, to accomplish their ends. So this seems like it's going to be a really fun mystery. I do also like mysteries that are set in Los Angeles, especially the early days of Hollywood. I always find them to be fun. Next up is Ray Bradbury's The Illustrated Man. I'm not going to lie, I picked this up just because I love this cover. I have been on the search for this older edition of Ray Bradbury's The Illustrated Man for quite some time. I do actually have most of Ray Bradbury's work in larger size omnibus collections, so I probably won't actually read this. This will just be like a display version. But if you're not familiar with this, The Illustrated Man, it says on the back, the tattooed man moves, and in the arcane design scrawled upon his skin swirls tales beyond imagining, tales of love and laughter, darkness and death, of mankind's glowing golden past and dim haunted future. Here are 18 incomparable stories that blend magic and truth in a kaleidoscopic tapestry of wonder. Yeah, I love Ray Bradbury. If you haven't read any Ray Bradbury, do yourself a favor and read them immediately. There is actually a good chance that you might find a lot of Ray Bradbury stuff familiar, as he did a lot of work in television, and a lot of his stories kind of still appear every now and again today, or at least the bones of them with new plots. So that's always interesting to see. Then next up, I have Paul Theroux's The Kingdom by the Sea, A Journey of Great Britain. I'm not going to read the back of this. I like Paul Theroux. I like his, I like travel stories. I like first-hand account travel stories, not the clickbaity ones that are like 21 great places to eat. Paul Theroux is really good about that. If you like kind of like travel monologues, I guess they would be, or dialogues or anything like that, like Paul Theroux. Highly recommend. Next up, I have the Transgression Machine by Edward D. Hawke. A fantastic suspenseful tale of computerized murder and interplanetary intrigue. Once again, I kind of got this just for the cover, but I do love old science fiction paperbacks. And it says, America in the 21st century is a tiny, computerized place, but there's still room for a messy murder or two. When Cabinet Minister Vander Defoe, inventor of the revolutionary Transgression Machine, fatally hemorrhages during a programmed operation, it's a job for the Computer Investigation Bureau. Computer Cop Carl Crater has a cassette full of suspects. Defoe's nymphomaniac wife, a co-inventor, and a political agitator who hates machines and who just might be onto some prophetic social. What's going to be fun about this is just kind of the fact that when it comes to actually reading these older science fiction things, especially ones that deal with computers, it is awfully outdated. So it's kind of always fun to read back and see what they thought computers were going to be compared to what we obviously know computers are now. Next up, I have Don Pendleton's Mac Bolan, Lethal Impact. Bolan plugs a deadly hole in a Far East heroin pipeline. I'm not going to read the back of this, but this is a fun action and adventure book. I'm quite sure all the Mac Bolans are. This one probably isn't actually written by Don Pendleton. Don Pendleton created the series and then became a house name, like most of the Gold Eagle books, where if you're not familiar with house names, it's where a series is written by multiple authors, all usually sharing the same pen name, or pseudonym, or in some cases it was the beginning author's actual name, the person who created the series, and then they just all write under it for however long they're contractually obligated. That being said, I don't know if the Mac Bolan series is massive. I do believe there's several hundred books. I've read 3. But they are always fun, just in-your-face action adventure. They remind me of like older, like 90s Jean-Claude Van Damme or Chuck Norris movies. Just over-the-top explosions and action and stuff like that. So if you're into that, pick them up when you see them. They're right up there with like the Death Merchant series for me. Just over-the-top action, if you're into that. Then I have another Western, Sun Boy, a novel of one man's odyssey from outlaw to Indian war god. Yeah, I picked this up mostly because of the cover. I do, like I said, I love these Westerns. But one thing I really like about these Westerns is how beautiful these like painted covers used to be. And you really just don't see that as much anymore. And like I said, Westerns like this tend to be very short. This comes in at around, 204 pages. So this won't take me long to read, and it's going to be fun, I think. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of outdated racial tropes in terms of Native Americans, but that kind of comes with the territory when you're dealing with these older Western novels. And it says on the back, he had been Philip Rainbolt, a school teacher, Southern gentleman, Confederate officer, frontier fighter. Now he was a renegade and alleged murderer, and a Kiowa war god, the man they called ... Sun Boy. So yeah, it'll be interesting to read. I haven't actually read the author, Robert J. Steelman, before, and that might not even be his real name, as a lot of the Westerns, just like a lot of the men's action adventure novels, were written under pseudonyms or house names, so we shall see. Next up is another favorite of mine, much like Peter Benchley. This is Hunter Shay's The Montauk Monster, which came out with Pinnacle Fiction. If you don't know about Hunter Shay, you are missing out. He writes a lot of really great creature feature books. Another favorite of mine by him is The Mothman. He does a lot with like cryptids, if you're familiar with like that term. He also has a podcast where he talks about like cryptids and talks to authors. It's called like the Monster Men podcast. But anyway, if you like that sort of thing, I highly recommend reading Hunter Shay. He also has a bunch of books, I do believe, through Severed Press, and then I think he also has some through Flame Tree Press. But I've read a lot of his horror books, and I haven't been disappointed with any of them. He is another one of those authors that if I see his books in the wild, I just grab them. And then Thieves World, edited by Robert Asprin. I've actually never read any of the Thieves World's books, and I kind of feel like I'm missing out because a lot of people have told me over the years that I would really enjoy these, since I do love old school fantasy and fantasy in general. And, you know, this I do believe is kind of like a short collection, because it says on the back that there are stories by Paul Anderson, Joe Haldeman, and several others. But yeah, I'm excited to check this out. The cover also is really cool, if you can see that. Then, the greatest spy novelist of all time, Eric Ambler, the Shimmer Inheritance. Probably pronounced that wrong. I don't know if he's the greatest spy writer of all time, but either way, I'm going to check this out. I have kind of been getting into espionage fiction lately. Not as much as others that I know. Like, I've read a couple Robert Ludlum books. I still think I prefer just watching the movies, but I am excited. I think Netflix or one of the other streaming services is doing an adaptation of The Gray Man, which is another book that I need to read, but I have heard really good things about. On the back, before the last piece of the puzzle is locked into place, before the last life is suddenly ended. It is a twilight world of nightmare and illusion, of espionage and counter-espionage. It is the deadly world of the Shimmer Inheritance. You can laugh at my pronunciation. I have no idea how to pronounce that. But either way, it should turn out to be an interesting read. And then I have Doctor Who, The Dominators. I'm not gonna lie, I just grabbed this because I like Doctor Who. So let's hope it turns out to be good. Then I have Chris Claremont's First Flight. I ended up picking this up because, like I said, the cover looked cool, and it gave me a real Starship Troopers vibe. The movie, not the book. The book was way different than the movie, and it also is a full wraparound, kind of like painted cover, and it just was really cool. But it says, the brass called it a by-the-book mission. Lieutenant Nicole Shay was too green to know that in space there is no such thing. If you're a fan of any science fiction books, you know there's no such thing as a by-the-book mission. Whenever someone in Star Trek or Star Wars or literally any series you want to talk about says that a mission's going to be a milk run, it is guaranteed to go wrong. Then I have Ed McBain's 87th Precinct novels. I'm starting to read a lot more older mysteries. I have never read any of Ed McBain's work. It has been recommended to me before, and it comes up in a lot of groups. So I don't know anything about the 87th Precinct novels. I don't know if I need to read them in order, but I do know there's 3 of them contained in this book, so I picked it up. And it looks really big, but the print's also pretty big. So I don't think it's going to take super long to read. Then I have S.K. Eppersons, The Last Stop on the Road to Hell. Bum bum bum, Borderland. Kind of has the cool eyes over the cemetery type thing going on. Definitely, it is a BMI horror book, so that is exciting because I didn't actually find that many horror books, I feel like, this go around, which makes me a little sad. But then again, I also have a massive amount of horror books on my TBR already. And it says, not much had changed in remote dingy Kansas. I don't know. Denke. If anyone wants to tell me how to pronounce that, please drop that in the comments. Since the pioneer days, descendants of the same families still walk the streets, the same customs still held the residents together, the same fears still forced the people to hide their dark secrets from unwanted visitors. For over 100 years, the citizens of Dinky? I'm gonna roll the dice. I'm gonna say Dinky. Had worked for far outside the laws of man and nature, hunting down strangers, stealing their money and their lives. But the time had come at last for every one of them to pay for their unspeakable crimes. It's kind of interesting that I picked this up. This definitely seems to be kind of a trope when it comes to like the more folkish horror. And kind of aligns with another book I just read, which was The Woods Are Dark by Richard Lehman, which I'm going to do a video on here shortly because it is a part of my Richard Lehman readathon, which I am kind of closer, I think about halfway through his horror novels now. But yeah, it definitely seems like that was a trope, especially for the folkish horror. Next up is Mary Stewart, author of The Crystal Cave, Wildfire at Midnight. This is another gothic looking horror book, I do believe, and it says, a haunting novel of suspense and romance that mingles pungent description and vivid terror as only Mary Stewart can. I have never seen someone use the word pungent in a blurb before, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, it says, Terror in the Hitchcock Manor, a novel that terrifies as it entertains. So yeah, I'm hoping that's going to be interesting. Like I said, I have been getting into a lot more of the gothic horror this year. Next up, I have Carter Brown's A Murderer Among Us, which, I'm not going to lie, I also just really love this cover. I like the 60s and 70s kind of like throwback type stuff. It's kind of also how I like to decorate my house, so it lines up. And it says, the sexy superstar was about to be cast as killer. Rick Holman's job was to prove she was wrong for the part. I do believe there was also a series based off of Carter Brown for TV. I'm not sure if that was an American or a UK thing. Or I could be completely off. I have seen a lot of Carter Brown books, and there is no author listed, so I'm going to assume that this was a house-owned property. Then next up, I have Keefe Brissell's The Cannibals. From Manhattan's TV studios to Hollywood's backlots, the most worried about, guessed about, talked about novel of the decade. I have no idea what this is about, but it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. And I've really enjoyed reading the more literary kind of, I guess you'd call them like outrage novels. There was another one I read earlier this year that I can't remember the name of, but it was the kind of the same thing where it followed, or at least what I imagine is going to be like this, kind of like the jet setting, quote unquote, like hippies and mods that are going out and doing all the things that scared adults at the time thought they were doing, even though in reality it probably wasn't as outrageous on a day-to-day as books like this make it out to be. Next up, I've got Bernard Cornwell's Stormchild, which is kind of battered, but maybe not a bad thing. Like I said, usually if a book looks this well read, it's because it was good. And it says, the last time Tim Blackburn saw his headstrong daughter Nicole, she was sailing out of his English Channel boatyard with the oddly charismatic leader of a group of environmental activists, some might say terrorists, called Genesis. Now alone after the deaths of both his beloved wife and his son, Tim becomes obsessed with salvaging what is left of his family by finding his daughter. So yeah, this may be a straight up horror. It's just a it says Harper fiction, or it might end up being more action adventure. I don't know yet, but either way it'll be fun to find out. And then, oh, I thought I had another one. I guess I don't. I have Death and the Spider, Spider number 4 by Grant Shockbridge. I love these covers. The Spider covers are always pretty cool to me. I've never actually read any of the Spider novellas. Like I said, they are novellas. They are very short. But this is another one of those men's action adventure properties I was talking about. So I am excited to read this and see what the fuss is about. But even if I don't like it, I'm most likely going to keep it somewhere around and display it because, like I said, this cover is awesome. I'm all about painted covers like that. I definitely think they should make a comeback. Next up is another kind of action and adventure science fiction book, and it says These Green Foreign Hills by Roland J. Green. You can see people with guns, something that looks like a different planet. Yeah, it seems like this would be pretty cool. It says Peace Force hits the jungle of Planet Greenhouse to stop an interspecies bloodbath, a Peace Company novel. Never heard of Peace Company, but it seems like it's going to be kind of fun, and if it is a series, that'll be pretty neat to check out, because then once I finish this book, if I like it, I can then read the next one. Then I picked up Ben Bova, Return to Mars. I've read a lot of Ben Bova's short fiction over the years. I've never read one of his novels. Ben Bova was a pretty prolific science fiction author and editor, and wrote actually some really good books on actually how to write, edit, and create science fiction over the years. So his stuff has become also a must-buy. This is actually one of the first times I've actually seen one of his novels out in the wild. So I am excited to read this. And I've also been getting into Martian fiction lately in general. So this should be quite fun. I have another Western, The Black Fox, which for some reason I thought this was based on the movie. Maybe it's not. But it's a thunderous novel of the bold, brawling men who risk their lives to build Texas. Once again, kind of a neat painted cover, not as over the top as some of the others, but I do believe this is actually an older book compared to some of the others I showed today. Let's see if I'm completely wrong. No, I guess this isn't as old as I thought it was. It came out in 1972, but it is definitely a well-read as it is falling apart. Then I have Matt Braun's, which this is the same author of the other book I just showed you, Black Fox. I do believe, because that is Matthew Braun, and this is Matt Braun, and this is Lords of the Land, the best-selling author of Outlaw Kingdom. So Matt Braun, it appears, was a quite prolific Western author, so I will most likely be checking out more of his stuff as time goes on. And it says, Matt Braun is a master storyteller of frontier history by Elmer Kelton. And if you're unfamiliar with Elmer Kelton, then you need to rectify that if you like Western fiction, because he wrote a lot of great stuff. And then I have The Executioner number 72 by Don Pendleton's Mac Bolan, Hellbinder. Syrian zealots preaching genocide feel the wrath of the Bolan Blitz. Which, every book is kind of a Bolan Blitz because that's his thing. Mac Bolan is always pressed up against overwhelming odds and then, beats them because he's the hero, and that's how things should go. Next up, I have Ralph Compton's The Bandera Trail. This is another Western. I won't read the back of it because it is quite long. I think this is going to be more of a like a family style Western than a straight up shoot 'em up from what I'm reading. But who knows? It might surprise me. Either way, I'm excited to read it. I also picked this up. This sounded awesome on the back. This is Sharps. Once again, fencing, swords, and flintlocks. I'm all about it. It says, for the first time in nearly 40 years, an uneasy truce has been called between two neighboring kingdoms. The war has been long and brutal, fought over the usual things. Resources, land, money, ... Now there's a chance for peace. Diplomatic talks have begun, and with them the games. Two teams of fencers represent their nations at this pivotal moment. When the future of the world lies balanced on the point of a rapier, one misstep could mean ruin for them all. Human nature being what it is, does peace really have a chance? Either way, this seems, I'm excited to read this. It also seems like it might be part of a series, or at least I'm hoping it is, because there just isn't enough books, in my opinion, set in a fantasy world of flintlocks and rapiers. If you know of more, please let me know, because I'm always looking for them. Next up is H.P. Lovecraft's Book of Horror. I bought this completely for the cover. I actually have a really nice hardback edition of all of H.P. Lovecraft's work, but I couldn't say no to this cover. I mean, look at that. Plus, H.P. Lovecraft's books tend not to show up in the wild as much as I wish they would, so that is also a must-buy for me. And then I got Rogue Moon by Aldous Bundries, and I also bought this kind of just for the cover. I have an L. Montague de Sprague, or L something de Sprague. Anyway, cover it like this. This is a Nielsen Doubleday. These are like the older hardbacks. I like to display these around my house, and they're also pretty sturdy when it comes to reading, or at least the ones I've picked up have been. But yeah, that was a mouthful, and that is my big reading haul for this week. I don't know if I'll do a haul this size in the future, or if I'll be able to. Like I said, this was kind of a luck of the draw thing. I just happened to go to the bookstore at the time they were going out of business, and they were doing these massive fill up the box sales. And of course, this seems like a lot, but I picked through a lot to find these. I am pretty picky when it comes to what I put on my shelves these days, since I doubt I'm the only person with this problem when it comes to collecting books, but I end up getting way too many, more than I'm going to actually read, or then not getting rid of the ones after I've read them that I don't want to keep. So it becomes a constant battle to keep my shelves decluttered. Also, you'll notice I did a lot of Westerns. I really like reading Westerns. I haven't seen a lot of YouTubers talking about Westerns. If you would like to see Western book review videos, like maybe once a week or something, because I can read these a lot faster than I read some of the other stuff that I do reviews on, let me know, because I can add those to my TBR, and it's definitely something I wouldn't mind doing because I do love Westerns. And as always, you know, like and subscribe if you found this video enjoyable, and if you did your own book haul this week or want to see me talk about Western books in the future, please comment below. And until next time, I'm Jacob Payton. See you guys later.